This is 43-year-old Daniel Krug. Just a few hours ago, he murdered his wife. Now he is playing a role, shedding tears. He acts so convincingly that his mother-in-law forgets her own grief to comfort him. For the past 4 months, Daniel Krug had been preparing the ideal plan to kill his wife. It was a plan thought out to the smallest detail, one designed so that everyone would suspect someone else instead of him. The police were supposed to arrest a completely innocent person rather than him. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Daniel Krug and Kristil Krug lived in Broomfield, Colorado. Both were 43 years old. Daniel and Kristil had been married for 16 years and had 3 children. Over the last few months, Kristil Krug had been receiving threatening messages on her phone and at her address from an unknown person. The individual claimed to be watching her every move. The messages came from various numbers. Kristil reported this to the police. Officers came to the Krug home and inspected Kristil's car, thinking someone might have placed a GPS tracker to follow her. However, the police found nothing. Detectives investigated the email addresses used for the letters and discovered they were sent from different states and cities. Daniel Krug called the police and reported that someone had broken into their house. When the police arrived, Daniel claimed he was returning from work and saw someone running out of the garage as he parked his car. Shortly after, Kristil arrived home from work. The couple discovered that the spare house keys were missing from the garage. Daniel stated that nothing else was stolen. The police advised them to change the locks. At that moment, the police never suspected that Daniel was lying. In reality, no one had entered the house. It was Daniel himself who had taken the spare keys. One morning, as Kristil was going to work, she received an SMS from an unknown number. The sender identified himself as Jack Anthony Holland. Kristil was shocked to see that name. Jack Anthony Holland was a boyfriend she had dated 23 years ago. Their relationship had been brief, and they had parted ways shortly after. It was strange for him to write to her after all this time. Jack proposed that they meet again. Kristil did not reply. A day later, Jack sent another SMS, this time detailing exactly what Kristil had done and where she had gone during the day. Kristil began to believe that the person stalking and threatening her for months was her ex-boyfriend, Jack Anthony Holland. Worried, she installed cameras around the house and began carrying a firearm for protection. A month later, Kristil received another message. This time, Jack had sent a secret photo of Daniel Krug with insulting captions. Kristil realized the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Jack was now stalking not just her, but her family. She went to the police station and told the detectives everything. She had no idea that the person writing to her under the name of Jack Anthony Holland was her own husband. Daniel was executing his gruesome plan step by step. To find the person sending the threats, Daniel Krug's statement was crucial. Therefore, the detective called him to the station. Daniel expressed concern for his wife and said he feared Jack Anthony Holland might harm her. In early December, Kristil received one more message. Jack wrote that he now had a woman in his life and would not bother Kristil again. Kristil was overjoyed, thinking she could finally breathe easy. In reality, this was Daniel's next tactic to lower the guard of both his wife and the police, planning to strike when they least expected it. On the day of the murder, Kristil took the children to school. Daniel Krug covered the camera above the entrance with electrical tape. He then entered the garage and waited for his wife. When Kristil returned and pulled her car into the garage, she had no idea her husband was waiting with a knife or that she would be dead in seconds. As she got out of the car and closed the door, Daniel struck her on the head with a blunt object. Kristil lost consciousness and fell. Daniel then plunged the knife into his wife's heart. He changed his clothes, went to the office, and to cover his tracks, he called Kristil and sent her text messages. A few hours later, he called 911.
Hi there. My name is Dan Krug. I don't think this is an emergency, but this feels really weird.
Okay.
My wife isn't responding to text messages or phone calls.
Okay.
And we've had threats against us. She was supposed to meet with Detective Martinez today, but I can't get a hold of him. Can I get either someone in the house to check in with Martinez, or maybe both, maybe a wellness check at the house?
Daniel then called his mother-in-law and asked her to go check on her daughter. Minutes later, police arrived at the Krug home. They knocked, but there was no answer. Upon checking the garage, they found Kristil Krug's body. At that moment, Kristil's mother arrived and was traumatized to see her daughter's blood-stained body. Soon, relatives and friends gathered at the scene. Daniel arrived and began playing the role of the devastated husband. Kristil's mother even comforted him, having no clue that the man beside her was the killer. Investigation revealed that cameras showed Kristil returning home at 7:55 a.m. after dropping the kids off. 20 minutes later, at 8:15 a.m., all house cameras were turned off and then turned back on at 10:15 a.m., except for the garage camera, which remained on. That camera recorded Daniel Krug leaving the house in his car at 8:25 a.m. Other footage showed Daniel arriving at his office at 9 a.m., acting completely calm and greeting colleagues as if nothing had happened. Police visited Jack Anthony Holland in Utah, 800 kilometers away. He stated he was home that morning and knew nothing of the incident. Detectives checked his phone signals, confirming he was indeed in another state at the time of the murder. Jack could not have been the killer. Kristil's mother testified that the couple's relationship was poor and that Kristil wanted a divorce, which Daniel adamantly opposed. This raised the detectives' suspicions. Investigating Daniel's past, they found he had previously dated a woman named Carrie. When questioned, Carrie revealed that after she left Daniel during their student years, he had harassed and stalked her using different numbers and identities. The pattern was identical. Furthermore, the home cameras could only be turned off by 3 people: Kristil, Daniel, or the killer. Neighbors' cameras showed no strangers entering the house that morning. This pointed directly to Daniel. However, there was one catch. Daniel had received an SMS from Kristil at 9:15 a.m. while he was already at work. Detectives discovered the SMS was sent via a scheduled program. Daniel had set a timer on Kristil's phone to send the message automatically to mislead investigators. They traced the IP addresses of the computers and phones used to send the threats back to Daniel's office. Moreover, the burner phones had been purchased with Daniel's own bank card. A search of his computer revealed a chilling search query from the day before the murder: how to hit someone on the head to make them lose consciousness. On December 16th, Daniel Krug was arrested. He didn't expect it. He thought he had committed the perfect crime by framing an ex-boyfriend. Daniel was a man who loved total control and feared losing that control over his family through divorce. On April 17th, 2025, at the final trial, Daniel Krug was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.